That's the sound of a punk rock / heavy metal band from the 1980s. The band is called Rogue Male, and they're described as the thinking man's metal. And also the most excitingly dangerous band since the Sex Pistols. Their song titles include The Real Me, Get Off My Back, Dressed Incognito, Forever Wild, Take No Shit, Cold-Blooded Man. Until I began researching Ian Indridson's disappearance, I'd never heard of Rogue Male. I stumble across band leader Jim Little while I'm gathering information relevant to my investigation from Ian's social media activity. Jim and Ian are connecting on Facebook. It appears to be a friendly relationship, so I get in touch to ask Jim how he knows Ian. He writes back, "Hi, Laura. I met Ian Indridson after he friended me back in 2010 when I joined Facebook. He was a fan of my band, Rogue Male. Over the years, we kept in touch, as he was a dedicated fan of my band and heavy rock metal music. I looked up his page and realized that he had gone missing. This is quite disturbing. If there is anything that I can do to help, please let me know. My thoughts are with him and his family. Regards, Jim Little, Rogue Male." Now, I'd been told Ian is a big fan of 80s music, and so am I. My tastes tend to run more towards new wave than hardcore. This is not really the kind of music I would have expected Ian Indridson, the high-ranking, buttoned-down government spokesperson, to have an affection for. Getting to know Ian, to see as many sides of the man as possible, could be helpful in understanding what happened to him and why. I'm Laura Palmer, and this is Island Crime, Season 7, Evaporated, Episode 2, What Lies Beneath. In my second season of Island Crime, I explored stories of missing men on Vancouver Island. Gone Boys focuses on men who have vanished in recent years. The men whose stories I told in that season were men who were living on the margins, guys who wrestled with a range of problems: brain damage, drug use, mental health issues, and some criminality as well. I picked up a lot of knowledge about missing persons cases during that season. First, I learned that adult men go missing more often than women, and that men are more likely to remain missing. I also came to the realization that even if someone has been missing for a very long time, they may still be alive. It was an RCMP officer who first reminds me that as an adult, there is no crime in choosing to walk away from your life. This police officer told me he had personally experienced this in investigations a number of times. My reaction back then was shock. I would have thought it was really rare for an adult to essentially run away. But then along came Brandon Kearney. Now, Brandon had been missing for 5 years when I first told his story. And then, miraculously, he surfaced. Brandon had been alive the whole time, living under a different name at times in the USA. Hearing about Brandon's story is one of the reasons Ian Indridson's wife Gloria reaches out to me. In the absence of any hard information to tell her whether Ian is alive or dead, Gloria wonders whether her husband could have walked away from the life they led together. And as you will discover, Ian left behind a few clues which could suggest he may have done just that.
Wide awake, all the memories are on replay. I reach for you, but which are thousands of miles away. Every heartbeat, every breath is filled with thoughts of you. I am so lost without you, and I don't know what to do.
I search out some online communities where escaping your life is being discussed. And the commentary surprises me. It seems there's no shortage of people choosing to evaporate.
I did this last year. Literally described the feeling as wanting to throw a grenade, walk away and just start over. Sat with that feeling for over a year before I couldn't escape it anymore. So, I did it. I would like to tell you that it was hard to walk away, but that was the easiest part.
I just moved as far away as I could. What amazed me was when I left, nobody cared. Eventually, I reached out to a few people I missed, but the interactions were underwhelming. All the toxic people in my life just evaporated.
I did this 3 months ago, just as the shutdown from the virus was hitting my home hard. I dreamt of it for years and saved up a lot to sustain me until I landed on my feet. Made the move to a beautiful island paradise, and I'm not looking back.
To understand whether this is a choice Ian Indridson would ever contemplate, I need to get to know the guy. Ian Indridson is a Viking. His wife Gloria tells me this is a proud part of Ian's heritage.
He was, proud Viking. He would call himself proud Viking. He and his mother went to Iceland one time. This was before we met. So, he must have been in his late 20s or early 30s at the time. And he has a couple of books of Icelandic folk stories and fairy tales that he used to read me from, because I would say read me a story while I'm finishing this puzzle, and he would just go to his copy of Icelandic folk tales and pick a couple of our favorites. Yeah, so I guess there's an awareness and an honoring of the heritage and the tradition.
Ian's father's family has Icelandic roots. Ian's great-grandfather, Sigurdur Indridson, was born on July 14, 1863 in Iceland. Sigurdur's father's name is Indriti, which is what the initial I in Ian's middle name stands for. Here's something I learned while researching Ian's case. Most people in Iceland don't have family names. Their last name is patronymic, so it's composed of their father's name plus the suffix either daughter or son attached. Now, once Ian's family comes to Canada, they adapt Indridson as a last name, keeping Indriti as a middle name for boys. Ian's dad, Alvin, and grandfather John held Indriti as a middle name as well. So I do a little exploration of Icelandic history and the connections to Canada. It's an aspect of researching island crime that I really like. You just never know what you'll discover when you start scratching away at the surface. For a time, I fall down a deep rabbit hole when I discovered the story of Indriti Indridson, an Icelandic spiritualist and medium at the turn of the last century. Indriti had psychic abilities. He was also allegedly able to levitate and would occasionally bump his head on the ceiling. Indriti held seances, went into trances, and was apparently plagued by a poltergeist. He could be teleported from one locked room to another. Indriti is described as wildly popular, but not without his critics too. He's also characterized as an unstable, unreliable charlatan. Now, Indriti is planning on starting over. He wants to move to New Iceland, which is actually in Manitoba, here in Canada. By then, he has started to sleep badly. He's complaining of headaches, and he's a bit depressed. Indriti Indridson is 28 when he dies of tuberculosis in 1912. Ian's great-grandfather, Sigurdur, does make the journey to New Iceland, landing in Canada with his first wife in June of 1904. His first wife dies soon after moving to Canada, leaving behind a daughter and her son John, Ian's grandpa, the first of the line to be born in Canada, in Selkirk, Manitoba. While learning about Canada's Icelandic past, I discovered there's a big annual Icelandic Heritage Festival held in the area where the Indridsons settled more than 120 years ago. That region is still referred to as New Iceland, by the way, and to this day has the largest Icelandic population outside of Iceland. Now, all of this is probably of no evidentiary significance in understanding why Ian Indridson vanished. And it likely doesn't provide any specific guidance as to where Ian could be found. But Ian loves history. He calls himself a nostalgist. And he took an interest in his Icelandic heritage. So I'm taking a little latitude here. Iceland is known as the land of fire and ice. The small country is home to multiple active volcanoes and large glaciers, too. The people who come from this place have learned to survive in a land that is often dark and cold. One of their defining traits I read about is resourcefulness. It's also one of the words Gloria first uses to describe Ian to me. Ian's birth announcement in the Vancouver Sun reads in part, "To Al and Sue, a son, Ian Indridson Milrose, on December 26, 1967, at Vancouver General Hospital." Milrose is a family name from Ian's mother's side of the family. Ian's wife, Gloria, is careful about how much she's willing to say about Ian's family history.
Well, there's things that I should not speak to because it's not my story to tell. But I can tell you that he was born and raised in Vancouver, and he is the oldest of 4 full siblings, and he also has an older half-sister. He loves his family very much. He's very, very, very loyal. He really got along with everybody in his family. Like, he would speak to his mom probably about once a week.
Ian comes from a family of some privilege. He attends St. George's Private School in Vancouver from grades 8 through 12. This prestigious school is founded in 1930. Alumni include a member of parliament, several Olympians, and Arthur Griffiths, one-time owner of the Vancouver Canucks. The school prides itself on building character. Their motto, without fear or favor.
At first he went to public school, then he was sent to private school. He was there for many years. He graduated high school from there. He hated it. He absolutely hated that school. Again, I don't know how much it is for me to say about the whole situation, but I know that he was quite bullied, and he felt this very big pressure to just excel always. That was, not a happy time in his life.
I unearthed the letter to the editor Ian wrote back in January 2001. The title, "School is Hell." Ian is writing in response to a story in the news regarding a principal sanctioned for using an inappropriate slur to a child named Richard. Ian writes,
"At the age of 9, I was a bright, bespectacled young lad who looked rather like Richard and began attending one of the most exclusive private schools in BC. I was called things much worse by my peers and beaten up pretty regularly too. In addition, teachers would freely call you a clot or a twit, or tell you you had the brain of a newt if you screwed up. You simply accepted it, and like most things that don't kill you, it made you stronger. School is hell, Richard, but I wish you well, brother. Signed, Ian Indridson, Victoria."
In his own words, Ian is describing being bullied, and he's suggesting these hard knocks in his young life make him stronger. But I find myself wondering about trauma. So many of the missing people's stories I have told involve trauma in their earlier lives. I don't know if Ian would have described his school life as traumatic. And as his wife said, not her story to tell. I learn there is one part of Ian's life that he does love talking about. It's the time he spends working at a hotel once owned by his father and grandfather. The Hotel Burnaby. I find old pictures of the place on heritage sites and a postcard too. On the flip side of the postcard, the caption reads, "You will remember Hotel Burnaby for the rest of your life." I'm told Ian is quite punny, and I suspect he would have appreciated that line. Ian's grandfather, Alvin, opens the hotel in 1953. It's the first hotel to be opened in the municipality. Burnaby is a city adjacent to Vancouver. It's BC's third biggest city. The Hotel Burnaby is a two-story building, white with brick and wood accents. There's also a totem pole-shaped neon sign with a vertical hotel and a horizontal Burnaby at the bottom. The hotel has 30 rooms, a banquet hall, a beer parlor, a licensed dining room, and a coffee shop too. There are entrances to the building with signs above them reading "Lobby Men" and "Ladies and Escorts." While I'm visiting Ian's home, I spot a couple of pieces of Hotel Burnaby memorabilia lovingly placed in a glass cabinet. There's a Hotel Burnaby ashtray and a room key. By the time Ian's a teenager working at the family hotel, the glory days are well behind it. Hotel Burnaby is a little down on its luck. Ian regales his colleagues with stories about his time working there, and he would have had some doozies. I look up some old newspaper archives and quickly find mention of the Hotel Burnaby. A man is shot and killed outside the hotel's beer parlor. A woman is stabbed to death by her husband there. And an elderly night clerk is badly beaten and murdered there as well. The Hotel Burnaby is no longer there. It's demolished in 2004. A local businessman is quoted as saying he'll be glad to see the old hotel finally torn down, as the vacant building had become a lure to vandals and squatters. Ian is a gifted writer, and for a time believes journalism could be his path. In 1985, he gets a scholarship to attend Carleton's journalism program in Ottawa. He lands a co-op job working for a small newspaper in Ashcroft, BC, called The Journal. He's taking pictures and writing articles. I read through them, and in his writing, his love for cars and his interest in BC history shines through. Ian loves writing, but decides journalism is not for him. He graduates from the University of Victoria with a bachelor's degree in writing and a minor in political science in 1990. It is there that Ian meets one of his closest friends.
I'm Mark Gastel. Basically, I am a computer programmer, database administrator, data engineer, that kind of thing. In regards to Ian, basically, I met him in university. Geez, how far back is that now? 35 years or something like that? Basically been friends since then.
Mark is enrolled in computer science. Ian is studying writing. A mutual friend introduces them, and they become part of a large group of guys. Here's how Mark recalls Ian back in the day.
He's really quite outgoing. He's a bit more, I guess from a personal standpoint, he was a bit more aggressive with the ladies than I was. Dived right in all those kinds of situations. Much to the chagrin sometimes, but I mean, he's always like a good buddy.
The characterization of Ian as a bit of a ladies' man catches me off guard. It's not something I'd heard before. So I press Mark to clarify what he means when he says Ian is aggressive with women.
If it was someone female, he'd pretty much ask them out. If we go to a party and stuff like that, and he hits on all the girls, and then later on they're asking him, I was like, does he do that all the time? So, I don't mean like physical at all. I mean yes, he was aggressive as in he would, if he saw someone he was remotely attracted to, it was like, shoo.
Mark is admittedly quite shy back then. And through that timid lens, Ian appears to be so much more confident with women. Ian, Mark, and the guys do a number of things together.
There is a fairly large group of us, and of course, we did the standard having parties and whatever, so a fair bit of drinking together. Smoked a bit of weed here and there.
Mark recalls camping together on Hornby Island, too. Ian and Mark's friendship carries on beyond those early days.
And also, I got a fair bit closer to his family, too. I don't know if his mom took pity on me or something like that, but I got invited to their house for Christmas a few times in Vancouver.
It's Mark's sense that Ian's family is reasonably well-to-do.
I mean, and they had a fairly big house in property in Vancouver, and that's one of the other things we did. They own property on Salt Spring. We sometimes did trips there, and we pitched tents on that land, and that's actually one of the earlier things I did when he had his girlfriend and I had my girlfriend along, and we basically camped out at the farm on Salt Spring. I'd say they're pretty well off.
The Salt Spring property Mark refers to is a large piece of land once owned by Ian's family. Today, it's the Ian Indridson Nature Reserve, 316 acres named for Ian's father. The reserve is mostly forested, with meadow areas, a lake, streams, and a small wetland. I've visited Salt Spring a few times. It's one of the Gulf Islands in the Strait of Georgia. Salt Spring is probably the most developed and the most touristy of all the Gulf Islands. Alvin purchased the parcel in 1988, when Ian is in his early 20s. Apparently, Ian's dad wanted to see the land become parkland, and so after his death in 2009, Ian's family start the ball rolling to make that happen. I'm including this detail in part because it says something about Ian's family and the background he came from, but also because I know Ian is a creature of habit. So if Ian is alive, it's possible he could return to some of his old haunts. I'll be mentioning places Ian enjoyed or took an interest in throughout the series. You could think of them as breadcrumbs. I think it's fair to say Ian comes from a somewhat privileged background. But here's the thing about Ian. Despite his comfortable upbringing, Mark recalls his friend Ian as being extremely cautious with cash.
That's the one thing that was, and I guess it's probably true of a lot of people that are fairly wealthy, is they're actually fairly stingy in certain respects. So let's just say Ian was pretty frugal, and so he, if he didn't have to spend the money, he wouldn't. I remember a story where I think it was some show or a TV show or something, they sent checks for like 13 cents to a whole bunch of rich people, and basically they found out that all the rich people cashed them. I remember, so in university, basically he had an apartment that was already basically paid for, and that was part of, I think. So I mean, he was already in real estate when he was in university.
Ian's wife, Gloria, also talks to me about what she views as Ian's conflicted relationship with money. She tells me Ian is fascinated by stories of people who live by their own wits, who aren't entrapped by society. She shares a Facebook post Ian wrote about his favorite books.
Thought I'd share a list of some of my all-time favorite books by and about hermits and others who chose, in some cases, quite a bit of social distancing. An Island Unto Itself, The Man Who Quit Money, The Stranger in the Woods, Once Upon an Island, Caribou Cowboy, The Curve of Time.
These titles are among those I see sitting on a little ledge in Ian's home office. It's a place he keeps his most treasured books. Given what Gloria has said about Ian's conflicted relationship with money, I asked Gloria about the book, The Man Who Quit Money.
That's about a man named, I don't know if he's still alive, he went by the name Daniel Suello, and he lived in Utah, and basically one day he just like left his last $35 somewhere and went off and tried to live without money. And a writer decided to document all that and wrote that book.
What was it about that, do you think, that fascinates him?
His absolute terror of poverty. Ian's had a very conflicting relationship with money all his life. He grew up well off. That's something I can tell you. I mean, obviously he went to St. George's private school. Obviously his family were not hurting for money. His dad owned a blue-collar hotel in Burnaby, which, with a bar is basically a license to print money, right? And when Ian was a teenager, he used to work the front desk at that hotel. So he saw a lot of the other side of things, and he was very scared that someday that could happen to him. Therefore, he grew up thinking, security, 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 security. It must be successful, must be successful, must be successful. What he found fascinating about those kinds of books was that people were able to be happy with less. He subscribed to blogs about frugal living and things like that. He did read a lot about the people who did that, and there's like a whole, as you can see in this house, there's many bookshelves, and there's a whole bookshelf that's dedicated to those favorite books of his. Like even from Walden, right? And there is a copy of Walden out there. It's just like that admiration of being able to just do it from your wits and your strength, and not having to be entrapped by this whole, oh my God, I must be successful, or something horrible is going to happen to me and mine, or I'm not worthwhile, or whatever, right?
Can you expand a bit on what you said about kind of a conflicted relationship with money, and how that kind of manifests itself in his life?
Frugality in general, saving, a lot of anxiety around, like, what if I don't have a job, right? Penny pinch here and save there and be careful and make plans.
Gloria says sometimes Ian would go out for a walk with Willow and return home with free things that people would leave around the boulevards on moving day. She views most of this as junk, but sometimes Ian would use these materials to build a little fence or to jerry-rig a small cylinder. I'm curious about Ian's fascination with the man who quit money. This book meant something to Ian. Is there a possibility Ian chose to walk away that January morning with a goal of testing his own wits?
My name is Mark Sundin, and I'm a writer. I've written for the past 25 years for outlets like the New York Times and National Geographic and Outside Magazine. And I've written the books called The Man Who Quit Money and The Unsettlers, to name a few. Yeah, The Man Who Quit Money is a nonfiction story, so a true story about a man whose name was Daniel Schellebarger, and later in life he changed his last name sort of unofficially to Suello. But he was a guy who wanted to experiment with what it would be like to live without money, and for him this was a religious experiment. He wanted to live by faith alone. To quote the Bible, the Christian Bible, he was interested in lots of different faiths and found this same practice in many of them. So anyway, he set out to do that at first for just a couple of weeks, and then months, and then years, and he never set a limit or a goal for how long he was going to do it, but he ended up living without money for more than 15 years, and a lot of that time he was living in a cave in the deserts of southern Utah.
I used to keep a newspaper clipping taped to my computer back when I worked in daily news. The story was about a woman named Laura and her dog named Takaya, who were living under a bridge. Now, at that time, I happened to have a dog named Takaya too. It means wolf in the Tsleil-Waututh language. Anyway, when the stress of the newsroom would get to me, I would find myself looking at that clipping and wondering what it might be like to just walk away from the pressures of my life. Which is to say, I can relate a little to the story of Daniel Suelo.
I mean, it's something he'd been thinking about his whole life. So when he was raised fundamentalist Christian, and he was very moved by the stories in the Bible of Jesus and other prophets who had decided to try to break out of society and live by faith. His faith was really challenged because he realized he was gay, and he had been in this church that didn't approve of that. He was in the Peace Corps in South America and basically had this big crisis where he realized he couldn't be a part of his religion anymore. And that led to what I would call a nervous breakdown and a suicide attempt. At this point, he was living down in the desert, and he held a job, but he loved nature, and he hated money, he hated debt, he hated bill paying and the idea of being obliged to do things that he didn't believe in. Kept paring down his possessions till he had almost nothing except, a backpack, and he was traveling around the country. And he kept with him, I think it was about $50 in a pocket for an emergency. At some point he realized, what really could this $50 do? This is not going to save me from dying or any major trouble. And so he just set the last of his money down in a phone booth somewhere on the East Coast, and just had this incredible liberating feeling that the heavens were pouring down and he'd freed himself.
Stop for a second. Imagine what that moment would be like. To take that giant leap, to leave behind all your stuff, everything you own. For Daniel, he's a middle-aged man, but he has no partner, no kids, no mortgage, none of the major commitments that tether us to our lives. But it still would have taken guts, I think. Here's how Mark explains the decision.
It went deeper than money. It was really religious and spiritual. This is someone who literally went to India and sat at the feet of the Dalai Lama, and then he went to Thailand. This is before he stopped using money. And he went to a Buddhist monastery and stayed there for a couple months. So he was on this religious path. But it wasn't just about capitalism or being a freegan or any of these other buzzwords. It went more deep than that. And in fact, he didn't believe in barter or any other sort of keeping track. So he really believed in this idea of the gift economy, in which if you had something to give, you would give it freely, and you wouldn't expect something in return. And likewise, if someone wanted to give him something, he would take it freely and have gratitude for it. But he wouldn't, set up a ledger and say, well, someone gave me this, so now I owe him that.
I know people who in midlife have made radical changes. People who chose to end marriages, quit successful careers. The desire to escape our ordinary worlds isn't really unusual. But what Daniel does is so extreme. I wonder how those who love him felt about that decision to quit money.
Everyone was a little worried about him when he first decided to do it, but he thrived so well that he not only did he maintain his friendships and maintain his relationships with his parents and his siblings, but he became incredibly social. One thing, once he got a little bit of renown, people would come from all over the country and the world to meet him and spend time with him. And he also started using the library in Moab, and so he would go online, and he developed quite a community of followers and fellow travelers who he would communicate with that way.
So you may be wondering, I certainly was, where is Daniel Suelo now? Daniel and I, as it turns out, are now on a similar path. Daniel left the cave behind to rejoin society, to care for his aging parents. Today, he cares for his 97-year-old mom. That meant taking over finances, paying the bills, buying the groceries. So what is to be learned from Daniel's experiment?
I think so many of us feel so compromised and even enslaved by the economic system, by capitalism, and this idea that you're born into debt. At least here in the U.S., you're born with something like $70,000 of debt to our national deficit, and then you spend your whole life doing jobs that you don't like in order to pay for things you don't want and don't need. And it's absolutely maddening and infuriating and depressing. And it's so difficult to break free from it. And so this story of someone who absolutely liberated himself from it, I think really resonated with people who feel trapped.
Was Ian Indridson feeling trapped in some way? Is that why he found the story of Daniel Suello so compelling? Trapped is not how Ian's friend Mark Gastel thinks his friend Ian felt about his life. Mark and Ian remain friends down the years. They stay in touch. Mark credits Ian with making sure the friendship stays alive. Ian checks in with Mark, even as some of those old friendships fell away. Mark tells me he can be a bit of a loner, and that it was Ian who would reach out to him, check in when he was having a hard time, making sure he didn't disappear. He says Ian is the one guy who made an effort to keep him involved. Mark also remembers just how happy Ian is when he meets and marries Gloria.
It seemed like he was super happy. I mean, his life, especially, when he married Gloria and all that, from that point on, he went, down the straight and narrow kind of thing. And he seemed like a really happy in his marriage and his life, and particularly with when they had Willow and all the stuff they did with that. And he always seemed like super, pretty tight with his family, and he did seem to really enjoy his work.
Throughout their adult lives, the friendship remains intact. They see each other once or twice a year. At the very least, Mark says he would make a point of going out to Ian's house on Ian's birthday, December 26th.
That was one of the things that didn't happen on his birthday before he disappeared. So, that was one of the things I was going like, well, shit. If I was there, would I have noticed that maybe he wasn't doing so great? It's the kind of thing I ask myself quite a bit. Because as it was basically like, I look back in Messenger, it's like, yeah, he had passed around a few messages on December 5th, and then on December 26th, I sent a happy birthday, and in both cases, he mentioned that, got the new job coming up, but he didn't say anything about like being stressed about it or anything. It was always it sounded like he was looking forward to it.
Ian's friend finds it difficult to imagine Ian choosing to walk away from his life, to perhaps quit money.
Like when I think, I know I'm dating myself, there was a show called Grizzly Adam with the guy who lives in the woods with the grizzly bear. Yeah, when I think of that, I don't think of Ian. To me, he didn't seem to be a person who was prone to doing things at the spur of the moment. Right? And it just goes along with the financial stuff. He was pretty methodical, and like, why would he like going to live in the bushes? I guess, well, that would actually, I guess, make money irrelevant, I guess. But that seems so weird. If his point was to truly walk away from like what you might consider a core tenet of his personality, that would be it. That's like walking away from all possessions and concerns about money and all that kind of stuff. That would pretty much be, like, I'm not saying he was like a really grubby, I'm gonna get everything, it's all mine kind of person. He was, but what he had, he was very methodical, and he thought about money a lot. So that would pretty much be the opposite. So that would definitely be walking away from your life.
Could Ian have followed the path of a book we know held a fascination for him. And if so, where did that path lead him?
Daniel's message was never like, be like me and quit money. Daniel's message was always like, follow your heart. Do what you really want to and do it freely without obligation. And for him, what he wanted to do was live like the prophets and the great religious leaders over the millennia.
Ahead in episode 3, convinced her husband may yet be alive, frustrated with what she views as a lack of interest by police, Gloria turns to private investigators.
Once I started working on it, there were these other things popping up. His books, his documentaries, these aliases, his resourcefulness.
I'm Laura Palmer, and this is Island Crime Season 7, Evaporated. If you have information about the disappearance of Ian Indridson, please call 250-995-7654, extension 1, and reference Vic PD file number 221017.